fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back again. This is going to be a really fun one. If you love fishing, if you love adventure, you love travel, and you love tying in some fishing with adventure and travel, you're going to love this episode. You're going to love this guy. I remember the very first time that it really hit me, like who he was and what he was doing and kind of the journey that he was on, was a video called Pursuing What Matters on YouTube. And the guy's name is Robert Field. A lot of you probably have seen the field trips with Robert Field, really popular show and now really a brand, and the whole RVing and just all the cool things that he's doing. But that one video, Pursuing What Matters, it hit me so hard. I know we're going to talk about that on the show today. And it really came down to thinking about your life and how short life is and what truly does matter. Is it the dollar, which you guys who have heard some of my past stories, you know, I was chasing the dollar. That was like all that mattered to me for many years. And that was also probably the lowest point in my life in terms of just fulfillment and overall happiness. And I was drinking way too much, and that was when all the anxiety attacks happened. And so I have a feeling there's a similar story here with Robert, and I'm dying to know what it is just from all the videos I've watched. So, dude, Robert Field, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. It's great to meet you and finally get connected with you.
Yeah, sorry it took so long. You're a busy dude, man.
Yeah, busy is one word, and then I'm also just kind of off the grid all the time, so it can be hard for me to find reception when I need it. But no, I'm glad to be here.
Yes, glad we're making this happen. So, what is the backstory? From what I could tell, like you weren't someone who was just like hardcore fisherman your whole life, but now it kind of is a massive part of your life. What's the backstory? Like, where were you born, and how did all this happen?
Yeah, man. So I was born actually in London, England, and then when I was about a year and a half old, we moved to Venezuela, Maracaibo, Venezuela. I lived there for 9 years, so I kind of grew up abroad. My dad was in the oil business, and then I guess I was probably 10 and a half, and we moved to the States, to Texas. I've been there ever since, and well, until recently, I guess. But I was kind of just on that steady, straight, and narrow path that society tells us is the one road to a happy and successful life. And if you don't do this, then you're going to be a loser living in his mom's basement. But yeah, I went to, finished high school, went to A&M for undergrad. Then I went on and got my master's in finance. Wearing a suit and tie every day. I had a full-time job and was going to school at night, and just again, kind of like doing all the things I thought I was supposed to be doing. And at the same time, really beknownst to myself, I was just miserable, man, and not stoked to get up every day. Not, found myself becoming the guy that walks in 5 minutes late and walks out 5 minutes early, and just overall not happy with my situation. And fishing is something that I really discovered later in life. Most people that are in some kind of position like mine that fish for a living, quote unquote, they've got a similar story. They've been fishing since they were in diapers, and their dad took them out before they could hold a fishing rod. And that just was not the case with me. I didn't really start fishing until about 6.5 years ago, while going to grad school full time and working full time. And yeah, man, just kind of fell in love with it. And
and why? Like, was it a friend or like why? Because it sounds like there's a pretty busy time in your life too. Well, why fishing then?
Yeah, I had actually broken up with a girlfriend. I was dating a girl that I was pretty sure I was going to marry, and ended up realizing that was going to be a horrible idea. So I broke up with a girlfriend and quite literally just had some free time, a little bit of free time, and realized that I needed a hobby. I couldn't just live my whole life working and then going to school. So her brother-in-law actually invited me to come out fishing, and I mean, I was just fishing on the bank and had no idea what I was doing, but sort of kind of just dabbling in it. I guess is what first sort of piqued my interest. Went like maybe a couple times and didn't even own a fishing rod yet or anything. But then basically I stumbled on a YouTube video by a guy named Drew Gregory, who's kind of a legend in the kayak fishing space. He works for Jackson Kayak and kind of unofficially sort of paved the way for the fishing kayaks to sit on top kayaks we have today. But anyways, he did an 11-minute video. I will never forget it. Where he went down the Devil's River in southwest Texas, which flows into the Rio Grande on the Mexican border. It's out in the desert. It's crystal clear water, smallmouth. There's rattlesnakes. And I mean, I watched this video and I mean, I can't even remember a single fish he caught. I know he caught lots of fish, but I remember watching it. And when it got done, I was like, that was an adventure. Like, I want to do that. Huh. And I went out the next day and I bought a kayak and a fishing rod and a GoPro and the rest, as they say, is history, I guess.
It's pretty funny. So you lose, and I've been there too. I'm not laughing saying it's funny. It's ironic how it all happened. You lose the girl you think you're going to marry, and someone says, "Hey, just go back to the pond." You literally go to a pond and start fishing. You watch one YouTube video, which is, man, that should give kudos to you too. I mean, I think it's inspiring to hear from someone who did not grow up fishing their whole life and watches one YouTube video and gets inspired enough to now look at you. I mean, had you not watched that one video, who knows what you might be doing right now. That's awesome, man. And now you're getting to do that with, millions of other people. That's
yeah, no, it's cool. And it's crazy how fast it's evolved. Like, if you had told me then 6 years ago that I'd be, 3 years into doing this full time at this point, I just said, Joe, you're still drinking too much. It caught me by surprise, man. It's crazy how it all happens, especially this day and age, how quickly it can all happen.
Yeah, because a professional, like, I don't know, is that the term, professional kayak angler? Like, that wasn't even a word. That didn't mean anything, right? It wasn't a thing yet.
Right. And never once in really the first 2.5, 3 years, even after I started, gaining some traction and getting some views, when it was still just very much a hobby, I guess it just, nowadays it's like, it doesn't matter what you're into because of the internet, because of YouTube, because of social media, you can reach potentially everyone on the planet just about. And so it's like, it doesn't matter how obscure the thing is that you're into, which at the time kayak fishing felt pretty obscure. That's changing now. It's really kind of blown up, but it's like anything that you're into, there's at least a million other humans on this planet that are into it. And now you have the ability to reach them, even if most of them are in Zimbabwe. And so it's like, for the first time in really our history, it doesn't matter what you're into. The hard part is figuring that out. And again, I didn't figure it out till I was 25 years old, but if you can figure that out, then this day and age, you can make a living doing anything because there's enough people interested in everything. And I always use this staple joke, like, I don't care if it's underwater basket weaving, there's people into it. And I actually had someone once call me out in a conversation. They're like, okay, yeah, Rob, but like not actually underwater basket weaving. And I said, no, Google it right now. And he Googled underwater basket weaving, and there was like 977,000 results, videos and blogs and vlogs. And I mean, I was like really not very confident that I was going to be proven right, but there it was, and so, yeah, man. It's,
so like
crazy the time.
Almost a million people, ironically.
Right. Yeah. It looked like I had staged it. I mean, you kind of looked at me like maybe I had hacked Google's servers or something, but yeah, no, it's an interesting time we live in, man, and you really can't do anything.
All right, so we left out a big chunk here before we get into what's been happening the last couple of years. So you're working this job, suit and tie. You lost the girl. You now have a new kayak and fishing rod and GoPro. Like, what happened next?
Yeah, so I started doing just some kind of silly videos. My first one, I remember, I watch it now and cringe, but went into a little creek and caught a bunch of white bass from the white bass run. And, I remember that video, I just posted it up on Facebook, just to show my friends. I mean, the whole idea was really just to show my friends and family, like what I was doing, my new hobby, I was excited about it or whatever. And I remember that first video got like 1,000 views in a month. And I just thought like, oh man,
That's pretty
I'm blowing
good.
up. And, and I just kept doing them for fun. And then probably the catalyst for the YouTube channel was about 4 or 5 months after I started fishing. It was that first summer. I don't know why, but I got it in my head that I wanted to go catch a shark from this little plastic boat that I had. And I had never fished in the ocean, really had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing in freshwater, and I had been fishing for like 5 minutes. And I went down the coast and I went shark fishing in Galveston, Texas by myself. And I was such a rookie and noob. I didn't even like look at the weather. Turns out there was a tropical storm offshore in the Gulf. So I go out, and while I'm out there, it starts getting rough, and ended up hooking and landing a 6-foot blacktip shark. Cool, fun, whatever. And I'm going back. Well, now it's real rough, and I'm trying to find my anchor. I basically unclipped from it. It's got a little float on it. And as I'm looking for the anchor, I'm not paying attention. Again, just total noob. And wave hit me. I wasn't paying attention, wasn't, balancing right. And I flipped, and I was in like the sharkiest waters in Texas, and the water visibility is about 2 inches. It's like chocolate milk. And my cooler lid was open with all my bait in it. So when I dumped, I was like bumping into like mullet chunks and just like swimming in a pool of blood. And so, anyways, nerve wracking. This woman had been watching me from the beach in binoculars. She later told me because she thought I was such an idiot for being out there alone. And she saw me flip and called the Coast Guard. So they sent a helicopter out. They met me on the beach. I was able to self-rescue. But anyways, I called this video. It was a 3-part series. And the shark thing was called Offshore Trip Gone Wrong Part 3. And I think that video now has about 6.5 million views. So it really took off, and it was one of those things where I had to kind of swallow my pride, and I almost didn't produce that video because I was so embarrassed. But I ultimately decided, I think a few people could learn, maybe the easy way, where I learned the hard way, just how unforgiving the ocean is. So in that video, it's like offshore kayak fishing golden rule number 1, never go out alone. Golden rule number 2, always have a VHF radio, that sort of thing. So I tried to make it educational, and and as is the case with YouTube always, there's plenty of people on there that express their maybe not so glowing opinions of me and what I was doing. But at the same time, I've had a lot of guys come to me and say, or message, comment on there or message me directly saying, hey man, thanks so much for putting that video out there. I am planning my first offshore trip from the kayak, and you really helped open my eyes or whatever. So I like to think that maybe if I prevented one person from getting hurt, then it was worth the ridicule. But yeah, that's kind of how the YouTube channel started taking off. But at that point, it was still very much just a hobby. I had no thoughts of actually making money at it at that point.
And not that many people were, right? I mean, this whole like being a fishing YouTuber is, pretty doggone new, right?
Right. Yeah. It sounds like a joke at the time to me when people ask me what I do for a living. Like on my Tinder date, I'm like, I guess I'm a YouTuber. Still kind of a weird thing. It's definitely still weird to me. But yeah, and when it transitioned from a hobby that was, maybe starting to take off, and I remember I got a couple, pro staff deals, 20% off of my paddle, and I just thought like, man, I'm like a NASCAR driver now. And then I guess it was about 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago now. I was still working full time. I had just finished my master's, and was actually, back with a different girl and living with her, which I don't know if I'll ever do that again, but living with her. And, basically one day we came home and girlfriend was upset, and long story short, we ended up breaking up. And I thought surely we were at the point where she wouldn't like just throw me out to the wolves, but she did. So kicked me out of the house. Went stayed at my buddy's house. I went in the next day to work to ask my CEO if he'd be cool with me crashing at his place till I found an apartment. Before I got a chance to ask him, he sat me down the first minute I got there and let me know that I was fired.
Whoa!
And no longer would be working there. So now here I am, and in like a 14-hour span, I'm now homeless and unemployed. And the 2 days after that, I got a call from my dad that my uncle, who was my closest relative besides my parents and my sister walked to a park on Pearl Harbor Day and shot himself in the head. So yeah, I found myself kind of like spiraling emotionally, obviously, sort of in line with what we were talking about before we started this. Started drinking a lot, feeling sorry for myself, and luckily a good friend of mine, Rex Del Rey, who's also a YouTuber and has become probably my best friend in the sport, he called me up coincidentally, and I guess he could just tell in my voice something was wrong. So he invited me to come down to his house down in Houston, a few hours away, and he was like, come on, man, let's hang out, maybe we'll do some fishing. And long story long, we get down there, and he just kind of helped me realize that, while, yeah, I can look at it like, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Poor me. He said, the other side is that, now you're single, you're unemployed, you got this new perspective on life and what's important. My uncle made lots of money through my grandfather's oil business, and obviously it wasn't enough for him. So he said, if it sounds like to me, if there's ever going to be a time for you to take a leap and try to do this full time, this is it. You're never going to be freer than you are right now. And that's really what kind of made the shift. And ultimately, man, I credit Rex with me being here and not in rehab or dead or whatever.
Man. So how did all that change your perspective on money then?
Yeah. So I left there like kind of, reinvigorated and, oh yeah, like I'm going to do this and I'm going to just take the leap and make it happen. And I remember like on the drive back up to Dallas where I was living at the time, I called my mom and said, Mom, I'm, and she knew about obviously my uncle. And, I said, Mom, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to make the leap. Like, forget this finance world. I'm not putting on another suit and tie. I'm going to do this fishing thing full time. And I'll never forget. She was like, oh, sweetie, that is so great. But like, how are you going to make money? And at this point I had made a lifetime, like $75 from my kayak fishing, little, project. So, yeah, it was like, well, I'm going to figure that part out, Mom, but, don't worry about that. Just be happy for me. I'm going to do this. And, yeah, man. And I really had no plan. I had no idea. And I get a lot of people that I don't want to get sidetracked too much, but I have a lot of people that say like, I wish I could do what you do, or I want to take the leap, but I'm just waiting to save up this much, or I'm just waiting for this, or I'm just waiting for that. And one thing I've learned, and I didn't even know it then, I just was like, I guess in just a place where I just didn't care enough to worry about it. But it's like, there is never going to be a perfect time. Like, you're never going to have that exact dollar amount you need in the bank account. You're never going to have your house. It doesn't matter if your house is paid off, or, everyone says like, oh, well, once I reach this milestone, then I'm going to make a change and start doing something that makes me happy. It's like, you'll never get there. There's always going to be something, some unknown, something else left undone. And, so luckily I just didn't worry about all that. I made maybe like an idiotic decision. I'm just going to go for it. But what I learned is that if you do that, if you commit yourself 100%, I'm going to do this and do whatever it takes to make it happen, I'm a big believer that it will happen. Like, it's like making that decision will make it a reality as long as there's hard work behind it. But most people are afraid to make that decision, or think that they're eventually going to hit some point in their life where that decision is going to be easy, and really you just never get there. Most people end up just continuing to work their life away and just dreaming about that day, one day when they'll take a leap and do something scary. And it was certainly scary, man. I had no idea. And the first 6 months, I'd say every month I had to sell some sort of big ticket item around my house to like make rent. I mean, it was not easy. Many ramen noodles lost their lives that year. But, just stuck with it, man. And, it's funny how I basically had made a conscious decision too. Like, I'm just not going to worry about the money. I'd rather be broke and a starving artist and living in my mom's basement, but going kayak fishing and doing these videos every day than wearing the suit and tie and making the pretty decent money I'd been making. And, it's funny how when you kind of just say, forget the money, that, again, if there's hard work behind it, the money will just work itself out. That it has. Did
you have any business plan at all?
No. I'd still say having a business plan would probably be a stretch for me. No, I mean, I just basically started making phone calls. I already had, like I said, a few pro staff positions, and so I started calling them and basically just reached out and said, hey, I've been doing this for you guys so far. I think you're happy, but I want to take this next level. I'm going to do this full time, but that means that I'm going to need some income. And actually, I think the 3 or 4 sponsors I reached out to, they all rallied behind me and helped support me. So, yeah, man. And it's just kind of been working out since then. I mean, I'm certainly not getting rich, but I have never been happier. That's for sure.
So one thing I heard you kind of saying in the word is fear, right? That's usually what's holding people back, and probably, I'm guessing, probably would have held you back had not those couple really bad things happen in your life in a really short span. Because I know, because I hear a lot of feedback from this podcast, and I've talked about some similar topics. How do you get over that fear? Because you pointed out, I mean, you have almost like a permission slip, right? When you lose a loved one, a family member, it's almost like, hey, here's permission to go do something. You look at life differently, and people are either waiting. No one waits for the bad to happen, but they're waiting for something good to happen. Everyone's waiting for permission to get over that fear, right? What's your, knowing what you know now and what you kind of wish you could tell your younger self or anyone out there? How do you get over that? And it's tough to explain, but any words of wisdom on just getting over your fear and pursuing what matters, like your video title is?
Yeah, man, I think, it's certainly not, it's not an easy thing. It is a simple thing, but it's not an easy thing. People often mistake those 2 words. And I think that, for one, I'll be the first to admit that, I am very fortunate and privileged to have, well, I wasn't born in this country, but to have been raised in this country where we have so much that, it's like, to me, I guess I was actually just talking to a friend about this yesterday who wants to quit his job installing solar panels to become a full-time guy, but he has no clientele. He doesn't know how he's going to do it. How am I going to have enough clients? This, and that, and I mean, basically my message to him was let's talk about the absolute worst case scenario. Should you take this leap, quit your job, and go try to guide full time? And as we started talking through it, it's like the worst case scenario was that he was going to end up having to quit that and go back and get a job installing solar panels, and I was like, so you're telling me that the worst case scenario is that you end up right back where you're at now, but at least then you'll know, and at least then you can say you gave it a shot and maybe start formulating a plan to do it differently the next time, and so I think that, people all the time say, oh, I'd love to do what you do, but I got bills to pay. And I'm like, I got bills to pay. What do you think? I'm just government subsidized? I got bills to pay. And it's like, dude, there's always going to be that mundane job that doesn't spark your inner fire waiting for you if you take a chance on something and it doesn't work out. So to me, it's like, again, this would be different if we lived in the Congo and we got to catch what we kill to eat, then there are serious repercussions if you just decide you're no longer going to go hunting. You're just going to start underwater basket weaving. Then you're going to have some problems. But especially in our society, in civilized society, it's like the worst case is you just got to go back out and get a job, And so it isn't that easy. And
I love that. I love that, dude.
Yeah, it's more complicated than that, but really that's the truth, And that definitely was in the back of my mind. I remember thinking well, if this doesn't work out, I'll probably have, $10 grand worth of credit card debt and I'll just have to go get a job and start paying it off. And, at the end of the day, I wouldn't be much further off than where I'd started. So
I love it.
I think that's a good exercise. Think of the absolute worst case.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are you going to die from this? No. And on the positive side, even if your business completely bombs and you lose it all, I mean, think of the fun you've had. Think of the lessons learned. And I remember reading something from Warren Buffett that he said he will not let anyone run any of his businesses unless they have completely bombed and literally ruined a company. Isn't that crazy? Warren Buffett, he wants someone who has failed and at least or at least had a time where they almost completely failed and bankrupt the company just because they were able to get past something that's incredibly hard and basically have overcome a massive challenge. Because it's easy to do a lot of things when everything's perfect, right? It's easy to invest in stocks when the stock market goes up hundreds of percents in a short amount of time. It's the tough times, man, that really make you and mold you and really help you grow. So I love that, dude. I love the worst case scenario. Did you give yourself a time frame? That's another question that I've heard. Like, hey, did I say I have to be making $1,000 a month, by month 10 or 12, or I'm going to quit and go back to finance? Like, did you do a time, or did you just say, man, I'm freaking doing this. I'm going to make it happen?
Yeah, no, I did not. And I think that different people work different ways, different personality types and different brains. So I would not say that for some people, would not be beneficial. I do believe in the value of like setting goals, for certain, and holding yourself accountable. And, but one thing I've learned is like especially if you step off that linear path of go to school, hopefully twice, and get the job and whatever, then, it's a little bit easier to, I guess, plan your life when you step out into the unknown and take a chance and take a leap, especially if it's something a little more obscure or something that doesn't have some well-defined path, such as kayak fishing YouTuber, right? There's no like instruction manual for how to do this. And so for me, I think that might have been limiting. I also just I'm just not that great of a planner. So I just didn't do that just because it's not my style. But one thing I would say is I did have sort of a loose idea of how this was going to go in my mind if I were to be successful at it. And now, 3 years after going full time, I'm much more successful and much further along than I had anticipated. And I also got here like completely differently than I had in my mind. So I guess my point is, if you want to plan and set deadlines or goals, I think that's great. But I think the key is to be fluid, because when you are branching off and doing something out of the norm, I think very, very, very rarely does the journey unfold like you think it's going to. I was just doing like a magazine interview, and at the end, the guy asked me, what's your 5-year plan? And I was like, dude, 5 years ago, like I just started fishing. This was actually about a year ago. I think I said, 5 years ago, I didn't even fish. And now look at me, like I have no idea, man. I don't know. I think the key is to have some goal in mind, some loose strategy, and then just, again, I think most of it just comes down to hard work. Like if you're willing to put in the time, there really isn't much that can stop you. And again, it doesn't matter what it is you're trying to accomplish. So yeah, the plan has evolved and morphed, I'd say damn near daily since I started. So,
and how did it change? Do you mind sharing like what you mentioned earlier, that how this whole thing unfolded was completely different than what you kind of thought? What different, and how did you think it was going to look?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple things. I'd say one, like the income sources. I really, again, obviously, as I said, I had no plan, really no idea what I was going to do. And at the time, I guess at the time, really my dream was to, evolve this thing enough to where I could go get like a Netflix documentary series or a show on Discovery Channel, maybe with some other guys or something like that. So I think for a while, the hope in my mind was that I was going to get this far enough along that someone essentially took over the reins and built something around me. And I think that was a lot of like me still clinging on to that structure that I had when I had a full-time job. But when you get to the office, you're told what you need to be doing. And, for that reason, being an employee is just so much easier than being an entrepreneur. And I think that was me still kind of holding on to that, but it is much more evolved into where now, like I have no desire to do that. I have no desire to give up control over what I'm doing in my content. I'm much more content just doing my own show and getting to really have complete control over the message, I guess. And so figuring out how to make money doing it this way has been you just gotta get creative, and for a long time I took just any job. If anyone wanted a 2-minute video about their product, I'd do whatever. I was desperate, and now it's evolved to where I really get to kind of pick and choose what I talk about. But for me, it's like I said, it's the important thing now is to kind of maintain control over the creative aspect of my content, even if that means making less money or it being more work. That's why I edit every single episode of my show, comes out weekly. So yeah, I guess that's been the bigger surprise. My plan, and again, this goes back to what I was just saying, you can plan all you want, but about a year or two into it, I started realizing that my plan wasn't the best plan, and shifted from there. And yeah, man, it's going well now.
That's awesome. So, kind of catch us up. You've quit your job. You have the YouTube channel. Kind of pressure's on. You're making no money. Like, do you remember the first time you were like, all right, like this could work? Like, was it a certain video that got a certain amount of views or a certain sponsor? Like, where was it when you're like, all right, this has got real legs?
Yeah, when certainly a few sponsors come to mind, a few companies that have been with me since the beginning. Railblades and Yak Gear, they're an accessory company for kayak fishing. They really stood behind me. They were my first ever kind of pro staff position. One of the guys the guy that found me there, he always jokes about how that's like his claim to fame. He discovered the Robert Field, but them, and then NRS is my apparel sponsor. They've been really good to me and treated me like family. But I think when I first really felt like this is becoming a show, like this is a real concept, this is something that could last. I did a West Coast tour. This was about 3 years ago, right after I went full time, basically, and I could not afford this trip. I just really wanted to do it and decided to make it happen. But I drove from Dallas to San Diego with my truck and a couple kayaks, and basically fished my way all the way up the West Coast from San Diego to Seattle. I filmed 12 episodes, caught like 26 new species of fish, met all these incredible people, got to see the redwoods, all this stuff. And I called that show Field Trips, or that series Field Trips West Coast. And that, like, really just putting the name to it, Field Trips, when that happened, it just started kind of evolving from just a collection, like a hodgepodge of these random fishing videos, into like an actual series with a theme that kind of transcends from one episode to the next. And that's when I started peppering in the message about, ditching a life that's not fulfilling for you and taking a leap. And that's really what I'm trying to, I guess, get across in the show. So that was really when it started to feel like something real. And again, not just a hodgepodge collection of random YouTube videos.
So that when Field Trips, like now it's, it's a brand. It's, I can actually on my other screen, I could see the logo. Is that really when it kind of came about, where everyone was like, oh, okay, I get it?
Yeah, I'd say so. That was when it, again, just started taking on a cohesive like brand, like you said. And that's when I started posting more consistently. And that's when I got the inspiration or idea for the RV life. It was like, I did that trip. It was, I think, 33 days, 7,500 miles, however many states that is, all these different fish, all these cool people. Yet at the same time, I remember getting back and just feeling like, gosh, I just barely scratched the surface of all these places I just went to. And, the whole trip, it was like, all right, I got a day here, I got a day and a half there. I got like a half day there, and then I got to move on. And I felt so rushed. And that was kind of when the light bulb went off. I got back and I was like, man, if I could have just taken my house with me, I could have taken my time and really experienced these places. And that's when I got the idea to move in the RV. And I did that November of 2017. And yeah, it's really allowed me to kind of, travel the country and catch all these cool fish and meet all these cool people, and just not be in a hurry to get it done.
RV life, baby.
Yeah. Which, that, I mean, segueing into that, like, that was a scary leap. That was I had a whole lot of doubt and apprehension and anxiety surrounding that. I didn't know the first thing about RVs when this light bulb went off. And, the thought of moving into an RV full time with no home base, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know if it was going to work out, and it was scary. And I thought about a million what ifs. How am I going to live without this and that? And so far I've been living in it full time for, it'll be 2 years in November. And not a single one of those worries has come to fruition, I would say.
So you really did not have a house? Like wow.
No. I have not had a home base since November 2017. Everything I own is in a little 34-foot box and I'm standing in right now.
That's nuts, man. So, like, tell me about the first RV. I think a lot of people are curious about that. Even just tips on buying one. Did you get a used one your first time? Did you go do some test runs and spend the night in one or go camping in one for a night? What'd you do?
Yeah, no, none of that. Those all sound like great ideas. In hindsight, I probably should have done some of that. No, I did a bunch of research. I actually paid my little sister a little bit of money to do kind of like a research report on me on everything I would need to know and do and set up to do full-time RV life. And, it kind of goes back to what we were saying. Like, we just live in such a cool time that anything you want to do or learn how to do, you can learn online. And again, if you're willing to put the work in and the time in, you can teach yourself anything. I taught myself how to edit video, like one Google, YouTube search at a time. And so, yeah, I asked her, like, let me know everything I need to know. And, if you Google full-time RV life, there are a million blogs and vlogs and guides and just everything that you need to know. So, again, we just, nowadays, like, you don't have to be scared to try new things or to take a leap, make a lifestyle change. There's other people that have done it already, and there's enough of them that have shared their thoughts and experiences that can really help you avoid a lot of the pitfalls. So I bought mine brand new. They're actually really affordable. It really comes down to parking. It's like people tell me all the time, oh, I wish I could afford RV life. And I'm like, oh, dude, I'm saving a ton of money over my previous kind of normal life. As long as you can mitigate the parking expenses, it's actually an extremely affordable way to live.
And how, like, what are tips on that?
Well, if you want to do it full time, you want to mitigate parking expenses. To me, the easy way is to do something like I do, create some kind of content. The whole influencer marketing thing has really morphed from this like weird, you're a YouTuber, like odd concept, to now, people know it. And even people that own RV parks out in the middle of nowhere, they know. And if you start a blog and just start jotting down your thoughts as you travel or do photography or, pick up something like that, then you can negotiate with these campsites. And last year, again, I lived in the camper all year and did not pay for parking one time.
Oh, wow.
I just mentioned where I'm staying in the show, which, I like to think that the people following the show, at least some of them have an RV or are looking for places to go travel and camp and stay. And so, yeah, I just mentioned where I'm at. And so they get some love, and, it doesn't really cost them anything to have me stay there as long as they're not sold out. So, yeah, figuring out something to trade in exchange for parking, whether that's promotion or, anything. You want to go help them rebuild their fence? I think most of these people that own RV parks, they tend to be pretty down to earth, normal people. And, if you just talk to them, you can definitely get some great deals on parking.
And let's talk about the RV community, because my parents have an RV and they love doing it. And I go join them occasionally, and sometimes I just throw the tent up in the back. And I've been incredibly impressed with the communities in terms of how helpful people are. And, people come around the fire at night to have a beer and tell stories. And it was really cool. It wasn't like my idea of like camping in a park where you're not going to see people. A lot of times you're pretty close to the next camper next to you. And I could see why people like it. Have you found the same, where you've met some just amazing people in this whole RV life, this community?
Yeah, absolutely. If you hadn't asked about that, I was going to bring it up. Yeah, it has really blown me away, man. And so far, again, I lived in it full time last year, and I tell people, when I was setting out on that journey back in November of 2017 and planning out my route for the next year, I was just so excited about all the different fish I was going to catch. I love catching new species, stuff I don't know anything about. And there were a bunch of those opportunities up in the Northeast. And I was excited about national monuments, and I'm going to go see New York City and do all this and that. And I was so excited for all these things. But, by the end of that year, I realized that really all of my fondest memories, the things that make this journey the most worthwhile, has far and away been the people that it's introduced in my life. I've met just so many incredible people from all walks of life, people that I probably would never have given the time of day if I ran into them at the grocery store or something. But because of our kind of shared passion for the outdoors, we were introduced to each other for whatever reason. And I have forged a good number of lifelong friendships as I've been traveling around, a lot of them more so than people I grew up with or whatever. And, and I think that the RV community, and I think it transcends even more broadly to kind of just people that embrace like an outdoors lifestyle, or people that are just into the outdoors. They tend to just be good people. And of course there's exceptions on both sides, but like I cannot think of one bad apple that I've run into at an RV park. And typically it's the opposite. Like you said, I'll show up and I got 3 different people coming over asking if I need help on hitching, and then they're inviting me over for beers and burgers later. And it's just a very welcoming community, and I think that applies to a lot of the fishing community as well, especially the kayak fishing community. The kayak fishing community is probably what kept me in the sport, and I don't know what it is about that. I have this like theory that really humans were just our society has forced us into like just such an unnatural lifestyle where we just go from one box to the next. Like you leave your apartment, you get in your car, you go to work, get in your cubicle, maybe you go to the gym after and you go back to your apartment. It's like we just live our life going from one little concrete box to the next. And I think people that just get outside more, I don't know if there's like, it's vitamin D, and it's just like something I think is just good for us, like good for our soul and mental health. And yeah, I think people that spend time outdoors just tend to be like happier and I don't know, seems like better people.
Oh yeah, no, there are scientific studies on that for sure. There's this book called The Last Child in the Woods, and it's curing America's nature deficit disorder. Pretty funny title, and it's by a scientist, but I mean he studied this for 15 plus years. And I'll have to find one of the quotes in there, but dude, it's crazy. Like they even studied men in prison that were there for like, similar backgrounds, similar time in prison. And so like, let's just say you had 15 men who were all in there for 20 years for a very similar crime. They would actually did a study. They put half of them inside of a cell that had no windows, no natural light whatsoever. And the other half, once again, completely random people that had just a window where they could at least see outside every single day. They all got the same amount of outdoor time, but at least they could actually see and feel a little bit of sunlight. And every single one of those guys who had the sunlight got out like in half the time from everyone else. Like everything about their life was better in prison. It was crazy. And that was just one of like a million studies he did. But so true. It got me thinking about how awesome that book was. But
yeah, man, send me that when we get off I would read that.
Yeah, no, you would love it. So I think the big elephant in the room, especially a lot of people who are listening to this are probably in your shoes, probably in my shoes at one point where, you're doing something that maybe is making good money and you could get excited about it, right? It wasn't like your life was miserable. It's just, but you didn't feel fulfilled. Maybe you didn't feel like, hey, this is what I'm called to do. And life's too short. Let's try something else. I think everyone always has the fear of how do you get paid? And you've kind of alluded to it, but the big question is like how, and you don't have to share your exact numbers, but like, is it half sponsorship, half YouTube, or like, what are the ways, knowing what you know now that you can, or even just bartering, like, I think that's a brilliant idea, but like, what are all the different ways that you found to be able to get by and still have money and enjoy life and adventure and kind of live out your dream life?
Yeah, well, I think, it's going to be different for everybody. I think there's two parts. I mean, it's much more complicated than this, but there's two main parts to what I would say, like shifting your life into a direction that's going to leave you feeling fulfilled. And, there's two steps to building a life that you're going to love to live. And the first one is, I think, the harder step. And that's figuring out exactly what it is, exactly what this thing is, this activity, this hobby, this sport, this whatever, that again, kind of like makes you tick, that you could do every day for the rest of your life without making a dime and be stoked about it. And figuring out what that thing is, I think, is the hardest part. And I think a lot of times we stumble into hobby and like, maybe this is it, when maybe it's not. I think that stuff can be fun, but that doesn't mean that realistically it's something that you want to just pour your, every ounce of your soul into. And so I think figuring out what that thing is the hardest part. And I think the best way to do that is just to try new things as often as possible. And I mean, that's kind of where I was. Like I never fished growing up, and I just tried it and I fell in love with it. And I feel very fortunate to to have stumbled upon what that thing is at the age of 25, I think that's probably ahead of the curve for most people. So yeah, I think figuring out what that thing is that's going to make you get up every morning before your alarm goes off, like that's the hard part. Once you figure that out, then you got to kind of get creative and figure out how to make money, which in this day and age, and to me, really the goal is making money without ever having to go into an office or having to do something from 8 to 5, like making money kind of on your own terms and from wherever you want to spend your time. In this day and age, there's a million more opportunities. And like I said, you know, the influencer route is one route. That's the route that I went, which is basically just creating content in order to gain a following. And if you can gain a following in this day and age, and you don't need numbers like mine, I mean, not that I'm, you know, there's a lot of YouTubers that are 10 times or more my following, but if you can build a following, you can monetize it. Again, all these companies, any company that really understands marketing nowadays, they know the value of influencer marketing. And so you can leverage that audience to make money. And again, there's multiple ways. You can either do something like I do, where I promote products for sponsors, products that I believe in, and the sponsors in turn pay me for doing that marketing. Another option is to build a following and then sell them something. So a lot of people have launched successful apparel brands, or, you know, come up with some kind of widget or gizmo or, you know, whatever, or improve an existing product. You know, that's an option. Build a following, and then you can either monetize marketing to that following for other companies, or you can sell something to those people yourself. And really selling something to those people yourself now takes out kind of the middleman and the oversight, and then you truly are your own boss. Whereas one of the drawbacks to the way that I do it is my last boss, it did not go well. I didn't like the guy, and I was treated unfairly. That's a long story for another time. But I basically decided I never want another boss. I'm going to do, you know, that was a big catalyst in me taking this leap. I don't want to have to ever listen to some nut job again. And but the problem is, you know, now I've got 6 or 7 sponsors that pay me on a regular basis. And so if each one of them calls me once a week, well, now I got a boss calling me every day, you know, and so it's better, but, you know, it's still not ideal. And it's, you know, I don't want to ever give off the impression that like I've made it and like now my life is perfect and I just, you know, have no complaints. You know, I think it's always a work in progress. But yeah, so I mean, that's one way is to, you know, build an audience. But, you know, I think I have people tell me, oh, I have no interest in doing photography. I'm not a good writer. I don't have the patience to edit videos. So that's out. And I think that's okay. Like, another option would be if you love fishing, let's say, and you want to just start making moves, start taking steps to making that your main income. And none of this happens overnight, right? Like, I do not recommend that anybody like quit their job tomorrow and just like, I don't know, but Rob said he figured it out, so I'm gonna like go figure it out. I mean, it's not that simple. And for the first 3 years, I was doing those videos for fun for $0 while working and going to grad school full time. So this didn't happen overnight for me either. But again, it was like I was just doing it because I loved it. Like I didn't have any ambition even then to make money at it. So I think that's the key. But you know, one avenue is like just go get a job. If you like, let's say if you're an accountant, go try to get an accounting job in the fishing industry for a fishing company. Then you start making contacts and meeting, you know, the right people and getting your foot in the door and getting kind of in tune with the industry. And then, I mean, I don't know, you know, I mean, that's again, like it's hard to plan for all this stuff, but you know, that's when opportunities will start to present themselves. That's when ideas will start coming to you. And for me, it's like, just start taking steps, like take a step tomorrow or today, right now, towards your goal. Don't worry so much about the entire plan, the 10-year plan from here to there. Like, just start taking steps. Do something small. Go send out your resume to a few fishing companies just to see. I mean, if it comes back and it's no good, you can always just turn it down and keep working the job you currently hate. But, you know, it's like, just start taking steps. I mean, if you think you might want to get into photography, like see if you can borrow a camera from a friend or just start using your phone. I mean, nowadays the phones are so good. Like, just go out for an afternoon and just start taking pictures. I mean, you know, just start taking steps. I think that's the key. People worry so much about, again, waiting for the perfect timing or waiting for this brilliant 10-year step-by-step plan to formulate in their mind. Like, it just doesn't work that way. The key is like, just stop waiting till tomorrow or waiting for, you know, God or whoever you believe in to show you a sign. Like, just start taking steps. I mean, that's how it has to start. And until you do that, it's never going to start. And you're just going to keep thinking about it for the rest of your life until you retire and realize you're too old to go spend your 401k doing the things you like to do.
I love it. I love it. Take a step. And you're not there yet, but a lot of the listeners are. If you guys have had kids before, you know there is never a perfect time to have a kid. You have the same fears of can we afford this? We're going to get a new house, got to get a new car, going to get a minivan or whatever. Like, there's never a perfect time to have a kid. There's never a perfect time to quit a job. There's never a perfect time to buy your first house. Like, there's just never a perfect time for any big decision in life. But life is too short not to take a step in the right direction if you feel like you're called to do it. So that's awesome. All right. So I want to talk about fishing for a little bit. We always try to have at least a couple fishing tips. And then I want to talk about kind of your transition of it's not so much about the fish anymore. It's about the experience and the adventure and kind of, what's exciting you right now. So I read one place that you said something about like, and I'm talking about you having to go fish in new places, right? You've caught a crazy amount of species in a short amount of time. Like you're knocking off these fish off the bucket list. And I think someone asked you like how you do it. And you're like, well, I basically have to be like a biologist and a meteorologist and a botanist and a geologist all at the same time. And I think that's a big question a lot of weekend warriors have. A lot of people who listen to this podcast never get to fish as much as they want. And especially if you go to a new area, it can be intimidating, right? And you're going to completely different areas, not like just like going to a new lake or a new part of Tampa Bay. Like you're going to completely new countries in some cases. But let's just even talk about the States. How do you apply what you've learned about fish and about science and biology to go out there and to be able to catch fish on a pretty consistent basis?
Yeah. Well, kind of like that quote you're alluding to me, like that's a big part of what I love about fishing. Like obviously fighting a fish is a great time and then you get that hero shot and that's probably what sticks out the most. But for me, I really enjoy the learning process, the struggle, the challenge of figuring out a new fish or a new body of water or a new technique, whatever it is. I think that like I've got a ton of respect for the guys who go out and they fish for bass every day. They are, arguably you can never master it, but they have got it dialed, right? And then go out and then catch 15 bass any day that they go out. And I cannot do that. Like I am very much a jack of all trades. But for me, when you go out to a new fishery or whatever and you struggle and can't, got to work hard to figure it out. Well, then when you finally do catch that one fish, to me, it's just so much more rewarding. It just feels like, such an accomplishment. And yeah, you really do have to kind of put all these things together. Like you mentioned, botany and geology and meteorology and biology, all that stuff. And like I've learned so much about like how different rocks absorb sunlight and give off heat. And I like know more about aquatic plants than I ever would have thought I ever would, and I just really enjoy that part. Like I enjoyed learning about kind of the natural world around us and these different ecosystems and, catching fish is just kind of the reward at the end of the whole process for me. So that's something that I think also kind of transcends with life. And what we were just talking about is I try to constantly remind myself, and it's a challenge. I feel like it's not natural for us for whatever reason, but I try to constantly remind myself to just like enjoy the process and stop worrying so much about the destination. And I know that's like cliche nowadays, but people say it and then just don't practice it. I just try to like live in the moment and enjoy again that struggle, even on days when it's going bad. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but people tell me all the time, oh yeah, well you do what you love and you never work a day in your life, right? People say that all the time. Well, that's kind of true, but really there's kind of a flip side to that, in that if you if you do what you love for a living, well, now suddenly what you love is your work. It is work. And I struggle sometimes where when we're out and, fish aren't cooperating for whatever reason, I find myself getting frustrated and, angry. Cause at some point, like I got to catch something or I can't put together an episode. This is my job now. There is some pressure to kind of perform, but, I catch myself, getting frustrated and realizing that, dude, if you're not having a good time, then that sort of defeats the whole purpose of what we're doing here. So, even again, people tell me I'm living the dream all the time, and I am, but I don't think everyone fully understands what the dream is. The dream is a lot of work. But yeah, so I think probably the easiest way the way that I'm able to, I guess, sort of dissect a new fishery or a foreign body of water or figure out a new species is, fish are fish. And so stuff that I learn in New Zealand about fish behavior, well, then I find myself like in the Gulf of Mexico, a completely different species, a different ocean, but a lot of those same principles apply. So I think traveling around and getting out of your comfort zone fishing wise and trying some new stuff is a great way for you to get better at the stuff you normally fish for. Even, I think you do the same thing over and over again where you're not really picking up any new techniques. You're just kind of beating your head against the same wall, hoping that, the fish are just going to be on fire today. But traveling around and trying some different styles of fishing, even if you don't think you'd ever get into fishing for lingcod, there's stuff that you can learn from lingcod that I think will help you catch more bass. So I think for one, traveling around and doing all this different stuff, it really, I'd say every new species I catch, like the next new species, even if it's totally unrelated, is a little bit easier. But most of that is driven from local knowledge, from people. Like I think the fastest way to get better at fishing is to fish with someone that knows what they're doing wherever you're fishing at. So my advice to someone would be like, anywhere you're going fishing, try to link up with somebody. Again, nowadays you can reach people. Search on Facebook. If you're going to, Charleston, search on Facebook for Charleston Fishing Group or whatever. And, just start asking people. That's definitely the shortcut, is getting some intel, some advice, and get kind of pointed in the right direction. And again, in my experience, most fishermen are generally good people and they're down to help. Now, again, obviously exceptions every rule, but there's no way I could do what I do without fishing with guys that know what they're doing. I mean, you can't go out for one afternoon and just, dial in a whole fishery while you're filming an episode, but relying on other anglers. Yeah,
it's so funny you say that because I've had a couple different tournament pros. I mean, guys who make a living fishing in tournaments, like with, a lot of money on the line, and all of them have said, they use the word network or community, right? And that's really what you said, is having a local network. And one guy basically said, you're only as good as your network, because everyone in the tournament series, they know how to catch fish, right? They're great fishermen.
Right.
It separates you between your network. And that's really why we built our whole Insider Club. I mean, it's not about sharing spots, even though a lot of us do. It's about sharing the trends, right? Everything you just mentioned. It's about sharing, hey, here's the types of areas, or here's the type of structure or the type of bottom that the fish are on. Here's what bait they're hitting right now. Here's the depth you want to fish. And all those guys said that, like, yeah, I never asked someone for their spots. I just want to know the trends. I want to know what's working, what kind of areas to be looking for, and basically eliminate the dead zones so you can concentrate on finding the good spots. That's awesome, man. I love hearing more people reiterate the power of the network.
Yeah, no, and it's so true. Like, some people especially are just so protective of their spots, and some people, that's all they want to know. Like, just tell me the spot. And It's like, dude, how many times have I been told, like, oh, you go here, you're going to catch 1,000 fish. And, you go there, you don't catch anything. Like, it's a spot fish move. I'm not a big believer in spots. I agree with that. It's more about understanding kind of the ecosystem and what these fish are doing and why. And then you can go catch them pretty much anywhere in the lake.
Yeah. One of the guides I had on, Captain Jay Withers, he's got a fishing TV show. He's listening. He's like, why spots don't matter? He's like, because fish have fins and no fences. He's like, think about it. They have fins and no fences. He's like, I tell all my people that they ask for spots. He's like, that's why I, as a fishing guide, I can take you to my best spots during that time. He's like, fish move all the time. Yeah. All right, so let's transition and we'll close out. You're very easy to talk to. This has gone longer than I told you it would, but you've grown this YouTube channel. And by the way, everyone, please do subscribe to it if you haven't already. Robert Field and Field Trips, you can look up any of those and you'll see it up there at the top. You've grown this thing, and just like everything, you kind of have to adjust. You listen to your audience, right? You keep cranking out content and saying, hey, what do you guys like? it seems like the next step is to maybe, because to me, like that whole adventure part, I mean, we took up a chunk of this, not even talk about fishing, about the whole RV thing. I think that's intriguing to so many people who do want to travel and adventure. Are you seeing your channel kind of transition to that, where it's not so much just about catching a new species here, and if you do, great, but it's more about that adventure and the meeting people and the cultures and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. That's my goal, is to kind of transition the show away from a strictly fishing show to more like a lifestyle and like a travel show, and to, I get a lot of questions like, man, what's it like living in an RV full time? And I realized that, I really haven't shown that much. So my goal is for still every episode to have some fishing in it. But I do want to start peppering in, more about RV life and traveling, and spotlight some of the people that I meet along the way. I'm actually toying with the idea. I may hit you up about this for your advice, but I'm toying with the idea of starting the Field Trips podcast, where we dive in a little bit deeper with some of the people I run into along the way, because, every episode comes out every week. Last year I did 79 episodes. I edit it all, and, they're typically like 25-minute episodes, but in a 25-minute episode, I can't have a guy tell us his whole life story, even if it's wildly interesting, which just about everyone I run into, it seems like, has some cool story. And so, yeah, I think I may start supplementing, some of that in, maybe do a podcast. But either way, yeah, I really want to kind of show some of that. I want to even talk some on the show about, taking a leap, taking a chance, maybe a few ideas for, if someone's not happy with their current situation, maybe a few steps they can start taking towards a better life. It's going to make them happier. So yeah, trying to make that transition, something I got to do slowly. It can be tough. The whole show is self-filmed, self-edited. I'm like a one-man band. So I've got kind of the process down for capturing the fishing, but, capturing some of this other stuff naturally and organically without just like sticking a camera in someone's face. It's a challenge, so I'm working through that. And yeah, for me, it's like just trying to never get complacent and just say like, okay, yeah, like I've got it dialed in now. Like I really don't feel that way at all. The show is really far from where I hope it ends up. So yeah, one step at a time, just keep chugging along.
I love it, dude. Yeah, it's and the fact you're still so young. And kudos to you for taking the leap of faith and doing it at a young age, and kind of figuring, not to say figuring life out, but at least figuring out what makes you happy, right? And just every day taking a step closer towards happiness and more fulfillment, and still doing challenging things, right? I think a lot of people think, oh, and I do this, my life's not going to be challenging. Of course, it's just like going to a gym, right? If you want to get ripped abs, it's going to hurt a little bit. The only way to see gains in a gym is to kind of hurt a little bit, right? The people who just sit there and walking on a treadmill are probably not going to see the same kind of gains as someone who's pushing themselves and might ache a little bit the next day. But that's how you see, change and growth in any part of life. So I'm super proud of you, man. Super proud of all that you've done, and kind of can't wait to see where this goes, and any new surprises that come up. Tell everyone, obviously, where they can go follow you. I know you're everywhere. YouTube is probably the main one to make sure they subscribe and start commenting and liking and loving all your videos. Yeah. So on YouTube, you can search for Field Trips. If you type that in, it'll come up, Field Trips with Robert Field. The channel name is just Robert Field. And then on Instagram and all that, it's at Yak Fish Field. Yak is in kayak, Y-A-K. And the same thing, youtube.com/Yak Fish Field. So yeah, you can check me out on there, and subscribe. And anyone that wants to comment on my YouTube channel on any video, I reply to every single comment on my YouTube channel. What? Seriously? I did not know that.
Full-time job in itself. Dang. Yeah, I'm big on that, man. If people can take 25 minutes out of their day to watch the show, I can take 15 seconds to reply to their question or comment. And man, I don't know if you've ever browsed some YouTube comment sections, but they are not all positive, and I reply even to the nasty ones. So if anyone out there wants to tell me what a horrible guy I am, I'll reply and thank you for watching anyways. But that's it, man. My birthday's tomorrow. You were talking about me being so young. I don't know, man. I turned 32 tomorrow. I'm starting to catch up.
Happy birthday, brother.
I don't bounce back like I used to. So, getting up there.
I got a couple years on you. Now I noticed I was tying the FG knot, which was my favorite knot. And it was like for the first time ever, I was like having trouble. I was having to like pull it away from my face because I couldn't see. I was like, I'm gonna have to get reading glasses soon, dude. I couldn't see it.
It's funny how these things sneak up on us, right? I mean,
Yep.
like, yeah, you know, I do feel young, but at the same time, yeah, like just like that, I'm routinely like reminded, usually very surprisingly, like, wait a second, I used to be able to do this pretty easily. Like, what's going on here? Yeah.
Any big birthday plans?
No, man, I went to high school in Dallas, and I find myself in Fort Worth right now, pretty close. So I may try to go get up with some old friends from back before it's funny, I run into people all the time, like from college, and they're like, dude, I love what you're doing. I didn't even know you fished. And I, answer, well, I didn't fish when I knew you. And actually, I went by Bobby my whole life till after college. So I always know when I'm around old friends because they still call me Bobby.
That's pretty funny.
You can call me Bobby, man. We're on that level now.
Hey, thanks. But yeah, dude, I was Joey. A lot of the neighborhood kids, I was Joey. And then all of a sudden you get older and Joseph, I didn't really like Joseph personally. So I was like, Joe, it's kind of more adultish.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I always joke about that. Like once I started putting a suit and tie on every day, it was like, Bobby, I sound like I'm 12. So I changed to Robert. Well, now, if I had known I was going to end up being a kayak fishing YouTuber, it, really doesn't matter now. So I could have stayed Bobby, but I'm not going back now. It's weird enough as it is.
Too funny, dude. Well, man, thank you so much for the time. This has been an awesome one. We could have gone another hour because I still have a lot of other questions. We'll probably have to get you back on in 2020 and see what you're up to. And I know this was needed for our audience too. One, just to share your story, and two, I believe it'll inspire some people to maybe take a little bit of a leap of faith, or at least a step of faith. I love that quote, and I'm going to pull out a couple of these. And for those of you, I know a lot of you listen in the car. You tell me when you're traveling. We will have a whole blog post on this. We'll embed a bunch of Bobby's videos from his YouTube channel on our site, and we'll put links to everything so you can track him down and ask questions and hopefully form a relationship and follow him in his travels. So, and man, if you're ever anywhere here in Central or Florida or Tampa, hit me up. We love to go fishing, and maybe we'll try to borrow my dad's RV and we'll do an RV trip or something. So.
There you go, man. I actually might be running out to Florida this winter in December, maybe. It's not January, so I'll definitely let you know, man. We'll get together. And yeah, and anyone that's listening, every episode I'm meeting up with someone, and this next year I'll be starting here in Texas and kind of heading up to Ohio and spending all summer around the Great Lakes over to like Minnesota, and then coming back down south before next winter. So yeah, if anyone wants to go fishing, if you got a good spot or a good area or know of a good run somewhere around there, like I said, comment on my YouTube or hit me up on social media. I will reply. And yeah, maybe we can meet up and do some fishing together. You can tell people you heard about me on the Salt Strong podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And I got to get you on my podcast if I start one, man.
Yeah, I'll talk to you offline about that. You definitely should. Cool. And it's just like everything. I learned it from watching YouTube videos, and it's not as intimidating as it seems. And like this is an easy one. We're not having a single edit. So if there's no edits, it's as simple as just putting intro and outro music and just checking the volume, and boom, plop that sucker on. It's pretty simple. So
well, I'd value your input for sure.
All right, brother. Well, thank you again. Happy birthday. And please, everyone, go check out Robert Field Trips. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow him on Instagram. Give him some love. And, man, thank you so much for all you're doing, all the inspiration, and some really good nuggets here. This is a fun one.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for the time. And, yeah, it was great to meet you in chat.
Yes, sir. Go get him.
Enjoyed it. All right, brother.
Bye, buddy.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was pain.